The exam room smelled like sanitizer and fresh printer paper, the kind of clean that never really hides fear. I sat on the edge of the padded table in my gray t-shirt, elbows on my knees, trying to make my hands stop shaking. A blood pressure cuff waited on the counter like a verdict. Through the thin wall, I could hear Mia humming in the waiting area, coloring in silence. She was 5 years old, too quiet for 5. The state letter was folded in my back pocket. Physical and mental fitness assessment required by Friday. If I failed, Mia went to foster care. That was the math. And right now, my heart was hammering against my ribs like it wanted out. "Deep breath," Elena Rossetti said. She rolled her stool closer, calm and all business. White uniform, stethoscope around her neck, tablet in her hand. The clinic light was brutal, but she still somehow looked warm. Dark hair pulled over one shoulder, eyes that didn't flinch when people got scared. She slid the stethoscope earpieces in, lifted the cold diaphragm, and eased it under the collar of my shirt, metal against skin, like a coin of ice. "Hold still," she murmured. I stared at the ceiling tiles and tried to breathe like a normal person. Her fingers brushed my chest as she repositioned the bell. The contact was clinical, but my body didn't get the memo. My pulse jumped harder. Elena listened for a long beat. Then she pulled the stethoscope away and met my eyes. "Your heart rate is high," she said, professional first. Then her voice softened. "How long have you felt this anxious today?" "I'm fine," I lied. My voice came out rough. "Just a deadline." Her gaze flicked to the note on her screen. Custody hearing. Routine, physical. Understanding landed on her face, quick and sharp. She leaned closer. Not flirting, not pitying. Assessing. "Okay," she said. "We're going to do this the right way. If I take your blood pressure while you're running on panic, it's going to read high and it won't help you. We'll give you 15 minutes, then repeat it. It's normal. White coat spikes happen." The relief hit so hard my shoulders sagged. "I can't fail," I admitted, quiet. "I heard you," she said, "but you're not failing in my room because you showed up terrified. Sit, feet flat, breathe with me." I did. In through my nose, out through my mouth. Her hand hovered near my wrist, not touching, like she was giving me space to choose calm. When I finally looked at her again, her expression was steady. 15 minutes, she said. "Don't make me chase your numbers all afternoon, Miller." A corner of my mouth twitched despite myself. "Yes, ma'am." She stood, opened the door a crack, and nodded toward the hallway. "Water's out there, small sips. Then, come back." As I slid off the table, she added, low enough that it stayed between us, "After you pass this, if you still want to talk to me for non-medical reasons, you can." It wasn't a line. It was an offer with an exit built in. I swallowed. 20 minutes, I said, because I couldn't risk wanting more. Elena's mouth curved, barely. 20 minutes. I spent the next 19 minutes in the hallway, splashing cold water on my face and watching Mia. She was small for 5, legs swinging from the plastic chair, coloring a picture of a house with a black crayon. My sister's kid. My sister was gone. My brother-in-law was gone. And I was the only thing standing between Mia and a system that chewed up kids like her. I was a contractor. I built structures. I fixed foundations. I didn't know how to fix a grieving child, but I had to try. Sam, my foreman, sat next to her, looking uncomfortable in his dusty work boots. "You look like you're going to hurl, boss," Sam said, not looking up from his phone. "Blood pressure," I muttered, drying my face with a rough paper towel. "If I don't pass, Higgins, the social worker, will have a field day. She already thinks a single guy with a 60-hour work week is suboptimal placement." Quote, "You're the only placement," Sam said, his voice hard. "You got this." I didn't feel like I had it. I felt like a fraud in a gray t-shirt. I walked back toward the exam room. The door was cracked open. I heard a cold, nasal voice full of authority. "Nurse Rossetti, why is the patient in room 4 still not processed? We are backed up to the ER." I stopped. Through the crack, I saw a tall man in a pristine lab coat looming over Elena. Dr. Marcus Thorne, the new administrator. He was the guy who signed the checks for the renovation I was working on, and he was a nightmare. He treated the hospital like a factory, and the nurses like cogs. "Patient needed a repeat reading after rest, Dr. Thorne," Elena said smoothly. She didn't flinch, but I saw her hand tighten around her tablet. "I'm finishing a second check." "You are on probation, Elena," Thorne said, his voice low and dangerous. "Your patient satisfaction scores are high, but your efficiency is abysmal. You spend too much time holding hands. Fix it, or I will find someone who understands metrics." He spun on his heel and marched out, nearly colliding with me. He didn't even see me. I was just part of the architecture to him. I walked back into the room. Elena was letting out a long, shaky breath, her back to me. She rolled her shoulders, a gesture of tension I recognized in myself. "You okay?" I asked. She spun around, plastering a bright, fake smile on her face. "Fine, ready to try again." She was lying, she was in trouble, and she was risking more trouble by stalling for me. "Elena," I said, stepping closer. I reached out, my hand hovering near her elbow before I pulled it back. "You don't have to do this." If Thorne checks the timestamps, I'll tell him I dropped the cuff," she said firmly. She stepped into my space again, her warm scent hitting me like a physical blow. She placed the stethoscope back on my chest. Her fingers brushed my skin, cool and soft. "Quiet," she commanded softly. I closed my eyes. I focused on the smell of her, the steady rhythm of her breathing, the way she had stood her ground against Thorne. For the first time all day, the hammering in my chest slowed to a steady, heavy thud. "Better," she whispered, her voice sounding like a secret. "Much better." 2 days later, the hospital renovation site was a war zone of dust and noise. We were tearing out the old reception desk in the East Wing to make room for the new triage center. I was running on 4 hours of sleep, coffee, and a bagel I hadn't finished. Mia had woken up screaming from a nightmare at 3 a.m., and it had taken me 2 hours to get her back to sleep. "Jax, watch the wiring," Sam yelled over the sound of a reciprocating saw. I wiped sweat from my forehead with the back of my glove. My head was swimming. The air was thick with drywall dust. I reached for a heavy slab of granite countertop and started to lift. It happened fast. The room tilted. The edges of my vision went gray, then black. My knees buckled. I didn't feel the impact, but I heard the granite crash. When the world came back into focus, I was lying on the unfinished concrete floor. A face hovered over mine. Elena. She wasn't wearing her white coat. She was in blue scrubs, her hair tied back in a messy bun. Her hands were on my neck, checking my pulse. Her eyes were wide and dark with panic. "Don't move," she ordered, her voice sharp and commanding. "I'm fine," I grunted, trying to sit up. The room spun. "You are not fine. You're dehydrated and your heart rate is erratic," she snapped. She looked up at Sam. "Get me a bottle of water and clear this dust now." Sam scrambled to obey. I had never seen anyone order my foreman around like that. "I can't go to the ER," I wheezed, grabbing her wrist. Her skin was warm. "If there's a record of a collapse, the social worker." "Shut up about the social worker," she hissed, but her hand softened on my shoulder. She looked around. The site was technically closed off. No doctors yet, just us. "If I admit you, it goes on your record," she murmured, thinking fast. "If I don't, you might die of a cardiac event." "I just skipped breakfast," I lied. "And sleep." She glared at me, a fierce, protective glare that made my stomach flip. Then she made a decision. "I'm off shift in 10 minutes, she said. "I'm taking you to your truck. I'm checking your vitals myself. If you are not stable in an hour, I'm driving you to urgent care. And I don't care what the social worker says." Quote, "You can't leave work," I said. "Watch me." She helped me stand, her shoulder wedged under my arm. She was smaller than me, but she was strong. She smelled like antiseptic and determination. We walked out through the back service hall toward air that didn't smell like drywall and worry. My truck, a battered Ford F-150, was parked in the contractor lot. She shoved me into the passenger seat and marched around to the driver's side. "Give me the keys," she demanded, holding out her hand. "I can drive," I protested, though my hands were shaking. "Jackson Miller, if you don't give me those keys, I will call an orderly." I handed them over. The drive to my place was tense. Rain started lashing against the windshield. I watched her drive, jaw set, hands gripping the wheel at 10 and 2. She handled the truck better than some of my crew. "You have a niece?" she asked, breaking the silence. "Mia." "Yeah. And you're raising her alone while working a physical job and apparently not eating." "I eat," I defended. "Sometimes." She shot me a look that withered me. "You're an idiot." Quote, "We pulled up to my bungalow. It was a fixer-upper I'd never had time to fix. The lawn was overgrown. The porch railing was rotting. Inside it was clean but chaotic. Toys were scattered everywhere. Plastic dinosaurs, dolls, blocks. It looked like a bomb had gone off in a toy store." I winced, seeing it through her eyes. "Sorry about the mess. The cleaning lady is me." Elena didn't judge. She walked in, set her bag down, and immediately went into nurse mode. She forced me onto the couch, checked my pulse again, then marched into my kitchen. "Where's the food?" she called out. "Fridge." I heard the door open, then a pause. "There is beer, half a jar of pickles, and is this a juice box?" "Mia likes them." She appeared in the doorway holding the pickles. "You cannot survive on pickles, Jax." "I was going to the store tonight." "Sit," she ordered. "Do not move." She started rummaging through my cupboards. She found pasta and a jar of sauce. Within minutes, the smell of garlic and basil filled the stale air of the house. Pots clattered. Water bubbled. It was a domestic sound I had never heard in this place. I watched her from the couch. She was efficient and graceful. She was saving me, and I hated it. I was the protector. I was the one who fixed things. I wasn't supposed to be the charity case. "You don't have to do this," I said, my voice rough. "I'm just a job site accident you're trying to manage." She turned, spoon in hand. Her eyes were soft, unguarded for a second. "You're not a job site, Jax," she said quietly, "and I'm not doing this for the hospital." The silence that followed her words was heavy. She turned back to the stove, stirring the sauce like it was the only thing holding the house together. The smell of garlic and basil wrapped around us, warmer than the old heater ever managed to be. We ate at the scratched kitchen table. Mia was at Sam's for the afternoon, so it was just us. Elena made me drink 2 big glasses of water and pushed half the pasta onto my plate. "Eat," she said. "Yes, ma'am," I muttered, and she gave the smallest smile. I watched her while I chewed, the way she cradled her own bowl in her hands, the tired lines at the corners of her eyes, the soft, loose strand of hair that kept slipping from her ponytail. "You don't have to take care of me," I said finally. "You already have a whole hospital full of people to fix." She met my eyes. "You are not a project," she said. "You are a person, and you are clearly very bad at taking care of yourself." It should have been an insult. Somehow it felt like the kindest thing anyone had said to me in years. The arrangement became a quiet routine. Elena started stopping by the site more often to check the ventilation, which we both knew was code for checking on me. 2 weeks passed. The Seattle rain was relentless, turning the job site into mud and the sky into one endless gray sheet. But every time she walked onto our floor, the color came back. I started noticing the little things about her that did not show up in patient charts. Her hands were always dry and red from sanitizer. Her shoulders slumped a little when she thought no one was looking. She always carried a thermos of coffee that she never seemed to finish. She would walk with a clipboard, eyes scanning the room, and even when she pretended she was there for airflow readings, I could tell she was really counting how many hours I had been on my feet. So I did the one thing I knew how to do. I fixed things. The first time it was something small. It was late, the sky already dark. I was heading to my truck after a long shift when I saw her in the staff lot, standing by a small sedan with the hood up. She was digging through her bag with short, sharp movements, frustration written all over her face. I got closer and saw it. One headlight out, the other barely cutting through the rain. She jumped when she saw me. "Don't," she said right away. "You're going to get soaked." "I'm already soaked," I answered, pulling my hood up. "This takes 5 minutes." "You don't have to," she said, but her voice was softer now. "I know," I said. I grabbed my toolbox from the truck and popped her hood. The rain ran down the back of my neck, but my hands moved on autopilot. I had swapped out 100 bulbs before. This was easy. She stood under the edge of her umbrella, watching. In the dark, the parking lot lights threw gold over her face. She looked tired to the bone. When the new bulb clicked into place and the headlight came on bright and clean, she let out a long breath, like she had been holding it all day. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Drive safe," I replied. I stepped back, closing the hood, careful not to brush against her. There was a line between us, and I could feel it like a live wire. She gave me a look that said she noticed that I kept that line there. A look that said she was both grateful and frustrated by it. The second time I stepped in, it was not small. Thorne scheduled a surprise walkthrough of the East Wing project. It was the kind of visit that was not about safety, it was about control. He arrived with a clipboard and 2 people in suits who had probably never stepped on a muddy site in their lives. They pointed at dust like it was toxic waste. "Your containment is unacceptable," Thorne said, his voice sharp enough to cut. "If this area fails inspection, I shut it down and your contract gets reviewed." I saw Sam's face go pale. Delays meant penalties. Penalties meant less money. Less money meant Mia's daycare bill did not get paid, and groceries went on a credit card. Then Elena walked in with a respiratory therapist, holding a clipboard of her own, checking the ventilation logs like she had promised she would. Thorne's gaze snapped to her. "Nurse Rossetti," he said, voice calm in a way that made my skin crawl. "Still bleeding minutes for feelings?" Elena did not flinch. "Ventilation is within spec," she said. Her tone was even, professional. "I am here to make sure the dust levels stay safe for patients and staff. And I am here to make sure this hospital does not drown in overtime and wasted payroll," Thorne said. He turned to the 2 suits. "Some staff do not understand priorities." He was trying to humiliate her in front of everyone, in front of my crew, in front of the suits. Something in me snapped. "Dr. Thorne," I said. My voice came out steady, too steady. The crew went silent behind me. The saws shut off. Even the dust seemed to hang in the air and wait. He looked over at me like he had forgotten I was there. "Yes?" he said, like the word hurt his tongue. "If you shut this wing down without cause," I said, "you delay your triage center and you eat the bad press when the ER backs up again. My containment meets the plan you signed." Thorne's eyes narrowed. "Mr. Miller," he said, dragging my name out, "this is not your hospital." "It is my contract," I replied, "and those are my men. You want to talk metrics? Talk to me. Don't use her as a target." The corridor went so quiet I could hear the hum of the lights. Thorne smiled then. It was not a nice smile. It was the kind a person wears when they find a new weak spot. "Interesting," he said softly. "You're very invested." He looked between Elena and me, like he was lining up dominoes in his mind. "Make sure your documentation is flawless, Nurse Rossetti," he added, and then he turned and walked away with his suits trailing after him. Nobody moved until he was gone. Elena let out a slow breath. "You should not poke him," she murmured, coming closer. "He keeps records for sport." "I don't care," I said. Then I corrected myself, because I did care. I care, but I am not watching him take swings at you for free. She studied my face for a long second. Her eyes were dark and searching. "That was visible," she said finally. "Good," I answered. My voice cracked just a little at the end. "Someone should see him for what he is." After she left, Sam clapped me on the shoulder. "Boss," he muttered, half impressed and half scared. "That guy is going to come for you." "Let him," I said, but my stomach tightened because I knew it was true. Thorne did not forget challenges. And now the fight was not just about Mia and the house and the contract. Now the stakes were sitting in a white uniform with a stethoscope and tired hands. Now the stakes were Elena, too. It was a Tuesday evening when things shifted. I was at home trying to fix the leaky faucet in the bathroom before the social worker's home inspection on Thursday. Mia was in the living room watching cartoons. The pipes groaned every time I turned the wrench, and water kept dripping into the sink in a steady, annoying rhythm. There was a knock at the door. I wiped my hands on a towel and went to open it. Elena stood there holding a casserole dish. The smell of cheese and tomato hit me before her voice did. "Lasagna," she said. "Leftovers. Too much for one person. You don't have to move, Miller." She walked past me like she had always belonged there. She didn't just drop off the food and leave. She saw Mia. Mia was shy, traumatized, and usually scared of strangers. But Elena didn't rush her. She didn't bend over her or ask loud questions. She just sat down on the floor, ignored me, and started stacking blocks like it was the most important job in the world. "This one is crooked," Elena whispered to the blocks. Mia giggled. "No, it's a tower." I watched from the kitchen doorway with a lump in my throat. Elena didn't push. She didn't pry. She just stayed there on the floor, letting Mia decide when to trust her. She had a kind of magic with her. Gentle, patient, steady. Everything I was not. My attempts at parenting were rough and clumsy. I could build a house from the ground up, but I had no idea how to rebuild a child's sense of safety. Later, after Mia was finally asleep, Elena found me under the bathroom sink, cursing at a stubborn wrench. "Here," she said, handing me a towel. She sat on the edge of the tub, watching me work. The space felt small and close. Her knee was a few inches from my shoulder. The smell of her vanilla perfume mixed with the metallic scent of old pipes. "You're good with her," I said, tightening a bolt. "She's a sweet kid," Elena said. "She just needs to feel safe." "I'm trying," I said, sliding out from under the sink. I sat on the floor with my back against the cabinet, wiping grease from my hands. I felt tired down to my bones. "But I look at her and I feel like I'm failing," I admitted. "I'm a contractor, Elena. I build walls. I don't know how to handle emotions." Elena reached out. She took the grease-stained towel from my hand and set it aside. Then she took my hand instead. Her thumb traced the rough calluses on my palm like she was reading them. "You're doing it right now," she said softly. "You're fixing the leak so she has a dry house. That's love, Jax. It's practical. It's real." She looked at me, her dark eyes searching mine. The air in the bathroom grew thick. Everything went quiet. I could see the pulse jumping in her throat, the small rise and fall of her chest, the way her fingers tightened just a little around my hand. I wanted to kiss her. I wanted to close that small gap and stop thinking for one reckless second. I wanted to feel her against me instead of the cold tile and the weight of my own fear. "Elena," I warned, my voice low, "I'm a mess. This situation is a mess." "I'm not afraid of messes," she whispered. She leaned in, just an inch. Just close enough that I could feel her breath on my lips. My heart slammed against my ribs again, not from panic this time, but from wanting. The lean in. I froze. I wanted to cross that gap so badly it hurt, but I couldn't. The picture of Thorne's face flashed in my mind. The social worker's file. The custody hearing. If I got involved with her and Thorne found out, if Higgins found out I was romantically involved with the woman who signed my medical forms, they could twist it. They could say conflict of interest, say I lied, say I manipulated the system. I pulled my hand away, gently, but it felt brutal. "I can't," I said. "Not until the custody is settled." Hurt flashed in her eyes, fast and sharp, before she could hide it. Then she covered it with a nod, like she was pulling a mask back on. "Right," she said, standing up and smoothing her scrubs. "Of course." Practical. She turned, walked out of the small bathroom, and a moment later I heard the front door open and close. The house felt colder than it ever had before. The house felt colder than it ever had before. The home inspection was a disaster waiting to happen. Mrs. Higgins showed up 20 minutes early, rain on her coat, clipboard in hand, like a weapon. The house was clean thanks to a panic cleaning session I had pulled at 4 in the morning, but Mia was having a full meltdown because she could not find her favorite stuffed rabbit. "Mr. Miller," Higgins said, standing in the doorway. She looked like a vulture in a raincoat. "Is this a bad time?" "No, she's just—" I was sweating through my shirt. "We lost a toy." "Emotional instability is a concern," Higgins muttered, already writing something down on her form. My heart started pounding again. I could feel the custody slipping away, one note at a time. Then the front door opened. Elena walked in. She was not in scrubs. She was wearing jeans and a soft cream sweater. Her hair was loose around her shoulders. She looked like she belonged in my doorway, like she lived there. "Hey, honey," she said to me, easy and warm. Before my brain caught up, she stepped close and kissed my cheek, a quick, warm press of her lips that short-circuited my thoughts. She turned to Higgins. "I'm Elena, family friend," she said smoothly. "And look what I found in the dryer." Quote. She pulled the stuffed rabbit out of her tote bag. "She must have seen it there last time she was over," Mia gasped. "Bunny!" The tension in the room snapped. Mia ran over, grabbed the rabbit, and hugged Elena's leg like she had done it 100 times. Higgins blinked. "I was not aware there was a female influence in the household," she said. "I'm around a lot." Elena lied without missing a beat. Her hand rested on my lower back, warm through my shirt. "Jax is very community-oriented." Higgins softened. I saw it happen. The lines in her face eased. "I see," she said. "Stability is key, Mr. Miller. A support system makes a big difference." For the next hour, Elena played the part like she had trained for it her whole life. She made tea. She asked Higgins polite questions. She laughed at my weak jokes. She helped Mia with a puzzle at the table. She made us look like a functional, happy unit instead of two broken people and a scared child trying to glue a life together. When Higgins finally left, saying we had passed inspection, I closed the door and leaned my forehead against it. My legs felt weak. "You saved me," I said. "Elena was in the kitchen, washing a mug. She did not turn around. She was going to mark you down for lack of support," she said. I walked up behind her. I did not touch her, but I stood close enough to block the draft from the old window. "Why?" I asked. "Why put yourself on the line like that? If she checks, if she finds out we're not." Elena turned off the tap and spun around. Her eyes were wet. "Because you're a good father, Jax," she said. Her voice shook. "And because," she took a shaky breath, "because I hate going home to an empty apartment knowing you're here struggling alone." I could not hold back anymore. I reached out and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, my rough fingers brushing her soft skin. "Elena," I said, her name rough in my throat. "Jax," she answered. I did not kiss her. I pulled her into my chest and held her. I wrapped my arms around her and buried my face in her hair. It was not about heat. It was about holding on. About not falling. She let out a small sob and melted into me, gripping the back of my shirt. We stood there in the kitchen, holding each other up. Two lonely people fitting together like jagged puzzle pieces that somehow found a match. The happiness lasted 3 days. I was at the hospital site, supervising the install of the new reception desk. For once, I felt good. I had passed the physical thanks to Elena. I had passed the home inspection thanks to Elena. For a few days, the future felt like something I might actually reach. Then I heard shouting from the administrative office down the hall. "This is a gross violation of protocol, Miss Rossetti," Thorne's voice snapped. My stomach dropped. I dropped my clipboard and walked toward the noise. The glass door to his office was open. Elena stood in front of his desk, her posture straight but stiff. Thorne was waving a file like it was a flag. "You documented an extended repeat assessment for a contractor during clinic hours," he barked. "And an outside agency called, asking whether you're personally involved with Mr. Miller. They said you've been presenting as part of his support system. That creates liability." "My personal life is not your business," Elena said. Her voice was shaking but still defiant. "It is when it exposes this hospital to risk," Thorne snapped. "You cleared a man medically who was on the verge of collapse in my lobby. If he had dropped a beam on someone." "He didn't," she cut in. "You are suspended effective immediately," Thorne said, "pending formal review." Suspended. License review. She was losing everything because of me. I walked into the office. "Dr. Thorne," I said, my voice low and hard. Elena spun around. "Jax, get out," she said quickly. "Is this about me?" I asked Thorne, ignoring her. "Ah, the liability himself," Thorne sneered. "She didn't do anything wrong," I said. I lied to her. I told her I was fine. She was just doing her job. "Jax, stop," Elena pleaded. "I'm not worth your career, Elena," I said, looking right at her. I had to do it. I had to cut the cord to save her. "Thorn is right," I forced out. "We're not together. I used you to pass the inspection. That's it." The lie tasted like poison. I watched it hit her like a physical blow. Elena looked at me like I had slapped her. Her face went pale. "What?" she whispered. "I needed the custody," I said, making my voice cold. I dug down for every hard, cruel edge I had ever used on myself. I did what I had to do. I turned to Thorn. "Leave her out of it. It was my manipulation." Then I turned and walked out. I did not look back. If I did, I knew I would fall to my knees and tell her the truth. But I needed her to be the injured one. Victims keep their jobs. Accomplices do not. The court date was 2 days later. I had not slept. I had not eaten. I had blocked Elena's number because I could not trust myself not to call. I sat on the bench outside the courtroom in my one ill-fitting suit. Sam was with Mia in the lobby. I was alone. Then it started. My chest tightened. The air went thin, like I was breathing through a straw. My left arm went numb. The hammering in my chest came back. Thump, 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 panic. I doubled over, gripping the bench. I could not get a full breath. The hallway closed in. Voices turned into a muffled roar in my ears. If I went down here, if they took me to the ER, I would miss the hearing. I would lose Mia. "Breathe, you idiot. Breathe." I couldn't. "Jackson." The sound of fast footsteps on marble, the sharp click of heels, then her voice. "Jax." Elena skidded to a stop in front of me, raincoat dripping, hair damp from the storm outside. Her eyes were furious and scared at the same time. "Go away," I rasped. "Thorn will." "Shut up," she cut in. The nurse voice was back, the one that did not negotiate with panic. She dropped into a crouch in front of me and wrapped her fingers around my wrist, firm and sure. "Look at me," she ordered. "Not the floor, me." I forced my eyes up. Her gaze locked onto mine like a handhold. "Okay," she said, steady. "We're doing 5 breaths. I'm counting. You follow my hand." She lifted her free hand, palm up, and moved it slowly up as she breathed in, down as she breathed out. "In," she said. 1, 2, 3. I tried. At first the air came in thin and sharp. Then it started to catch. "Out," she said. "Good. Again." She kept counting. Her voice was low and even. The vice around my chest did not vanish, but it loosened 1 notch at a time. "That's it," she murmured. "You're not dying. You're overloaded." My vision steadied. The numbness in my arm faded. "You shouldn't be here," I whispered. My voice was shredded. "You'll lose your job." "I'm not on the clock," she snapped, then softened without losing control. "And even if I was, I still choose where I stand." She squeezed my wrist once, not romantic. "Anchor." "I ran because Sam called me," she said. "I don't care about Thorn's metrics. I care that you show up for that kid and forget to show up for yourself." My throat burned. "I was trying to protect you," I admitted. The words scraped on the way out. "I'm scared if I keep you close, I'll cost you everything." Her eyes flashed. "You don't get to decide my risks for me," she said. The bailiff opened the door. "Jackson Miller." I looked at the door, then at Elena. "Stay?" I asked. It was the most vulnerable word I had ever said. She took my hand and squeezed. "Right here," she said. The hearing was a blur, but I remember one thing. Every time I thought my voice might crack, I looked up and saw Elena in the front row, holding Mia's hand. And I kept going. I spoke clearly. I did not apologize for who I was. I told the truth about our life. About long shifts and cheap dinners and the way Mia laughed in her sleep when she finally felt safe. When the gavel came down and the judge said, quote, "Custody granted," I did not cheer. I just sat down and put my face in my hands. We walked out into the lobby. The rain outside had finally stopped. I turned to Elena. "Thorn?" "I resigned this morning," she said. My head snapped up. "What?" "I handed in my letter before I ran here," she said. There was a small tremor in her hands. "I'm not working for a man who treats patients like numbers. I'll find something else, maybe private practice, maybe pediatrics." "You quit for me," I said. I quit for me, she corrected gently. But you were the catalyst. I looked at her. Her hair was messy. She was holding Mia's stuffed rabbit. She looked tired and strong and completely out of my league. I have a renovation project, I said slowly. Big job. Needs a lot of oversight. The client is difficult, and there's a 5-year-old resident who needs constant medical attention for scrapes and bruised knees. She smiled then. A slow, bright smile that lit up the dull hallway. Does it pay well? She asked. Terrible pay, I said, stepping closer. But the benefits include free lasagna and a guy who will fix every leaking pipe in your life for the rest of eternity. 6 weeks later, the bungalow looked different. The porch railing was fixed. The lawn was finally mowed. Inside there were throw pillows. Actual decorative pillows I would never have bought on my own. I walked into the kitchen. Elena was at the counter, chopping vegetables. Mia sat on the counter swinging her legs, wearing a plastic toy stethoscope. Breath in, Mia commanded, pressing the plastic disc to a milk carton. Is the milk healthy, doctor? Elena asked in a serious voice. It has a bellyache, Mia announced. I leaned against the doorframe and watched them. The hole that had lived in my chest for years, the one that made me feel like a machine built only for work, was gone. The house was full of noise and mess and the smell of garlic. Elena looked up and saw me. Hey, she said, her face softening. Hey, I answered. I walked over, wrapped my arms around her waist from behind, and kissed her temple. She leaned back into me like she had always been meant to fit there. Thorne called, she said casually. He wants me back. The nurses threatened to walk out. Yeah? I tightened my hold. What did you say? I told him I'm consulting now, she said. My rates have doubled. I laughed. The sound felt different in my chest, looser, warmer. She turned in my arms and picked up her real stethoscope from the counter. She slid the earpieces in and pressed the cold metal to my chest. Let's check the patient, she teased. She listened for a moment, her eyes on mine. A playful, tender silence stretched between us. Well? I asked. She pulled the stethoscope off and draped it around my neck. Then she tugged me down for a real kiss. Still racing, she whispered against my lips. Good thing, I'm here to monitor it. I kissed her back, steady and sure, knowing that for the first time in my life, my heart was not racing from fear. It was racing because it was finally truly home.